Something a lot of people forget to do is use lube when screwing in their hardware. So last week I finished oiling the guitar. I've left it to sit for a little while and everything's cured and it's nice and ready to start assembling. I'm going to start with the fairly simple bits that screw in or hammer in and probably have the most chance of ruining the finish, just in case, so that once I've got those done, everything's a bit easier to deal with. So I think the first few things are probably strap buttons, bridge and string through ferrules. I'm going to do the ferrules first because I need to use a hammer to get those in. And obviously if I damage anything, we're going back a step. So I'm going to get these out and I need something to use as a drift to knock them in with. So let's have a look for something that's the right size, which isn't that. So this piece of maple dowel wasn't the right size 2 minutes ago, but now it is. I've tapered the end slightly so it should sit comfortably just in one of these ferrules. I may have to taper it a little bit more if it starts to get stuck, but we'll see. And pretty much all I need to do is line them up and tap them in. I love it when a plan comes together. So that is a free pick. It's too thick for me. That is the string through ferrules, all in place. And we don't appear to have damaged the finish at all, thankfully. So I'm now going to take the opportunity whilst I'm here to put the strap buttons in, or the strap locks. Because I use the flush mount ones, they sit inside a hole rather than sitting proud on the actual body. So instead of having it sticking out there, it slots inside like that. So they're in, and we'll put the locking part of those to one side. And I think now is probably a good time to find out if the bridge that I've made works. So I'm going to try and put this together, if I can remember how it goes together. That could be a challenge. ends. Now obviously you need to drill a hole for a screw to hold these in place, but what I'm going to do first is just temporarily pop them all in, put the ferrule on top and just nip them up gently, not so that they're set solidly, but just so that they'll hold themselves in place whilst I get them all nice and square and mark where I want to drill those holes. One thing I do like about these tuners is they've actually got a small, what looks like a plastic bushing on the post itself, which is it's got a split in it here, and obviously it's very slightly oversized. So when that slips into the screw-in bushing, it just fills up any of the tiny little space that's usually there for something to have a nice fit. And it kind of stops any of the wobble that you normally get in tuner posts. That's a really nice little touch. I'm definitely going to be using these tuners again somewhere. Something a lot of people forget to do is use lube when screwing in their hardware. Beeswax is a great way of just kind of smoothing the transition for the screw to go into the hole. It just stops it binding and reduces the likelihood of you shearing the head off the screw. And if you've ever done that, you know that you want to avoid that at all costs. So I've usually got a couple of blocks of beeswax about left over from what I've been throwing in the wax pot for pickups. So I'll just kind of use the thread to scrape a bit of the wax off, and it's really hard to show because it's very tiny, but that thread now has quite a lot of beeswax just embedded in it, which as I start to screw in here will just coat the inside of this hole and give it a really nice thread to cut into. It'll just make it move a lot more smoothly and reduce the chance of me ballsing things up. And also, don't over tighten them. When it feels like it wants to stop, stop. Especially with something like the tuner screws. They're not there to screw the tuner down to the headstock. They're literally only there to stop the tuner twisting. So once they're in and they're sat snug, as long as there's no rattle or movement within the whole tuner, which if you tighten up the nut at the top of the headstock that's on the ferrule on the post, easy for you to see, then there's going to be no movement at all, and that cannot twist, it cannot lift, it's rock solid. That's going to give you much better tuning stability. If you try and tighten it right down, then you're putting a weak point in there, which at best it's just going to pull it a bit harder on one side against the headstock. At worst, it's going to shear the top off the screw and mean that you can't put the tuner on at the right angle without drilling out a huge chunk of the headstock. Ask me how I know these things. I've made these mistakes in the past. And there we have the tuners, which, if I do say so myself, look absolutely fantastic. I will get out the spanner and I'll tighten up the nut on here, and then I think the next thing to make a start on is the electronics.